What's poppin', people? Thank you for tuning on in to this video and joining the fun, man. I appreciate it. If you guys are fans of the radio show, the Tobin and Leroy Show, you guys can get that now on the Ticket Miami's YouTube page. The link is in the description here, so you guys can go over there, subscribe, bling, bling, do that whole thing. I don't do those fancy sound effects there, but bling, bling, they do over there. So you know what? Subscribe there, subscribe here, subscribe everywhere for our content. And appreciate you guys tuning on in. This is I'm still, chewing on a lot of stuff from the Pat Riley press conference. A lot to dive into. We talked about the Tyler Hero thing a little bit earlier this week. But I am curious, I was hearing a little bit this week on Duncan Robinson and, the message that he delivered to him and the message that he delivered to Bam and the message that he delivered to Strus and Oladipo and really everybody. Everybody really got it except for like two guys at the press conference. Jimmy Butler and PJ Tucker. Everybody else kind of got the business from Riley. Bam on like a softer scale because he was like kind of like, let's figure out how to get him more involved. It's time for getting him more consistent shots every single night. This was Pat Riley talking about the idea of running it back. Here's what he had to say.
I run it back with my wife every week. So, and we always come to good terms. And even if we ran it back, we would have a very good team. But you have to be, I think, very proactive in looking at how you're going, to improve. And, this is a great story that started in 2019. You're caught in betwixt and in between right now with these young players that are rising. Think about Tatum and Brown, where they were 3 or 4 years ago in their playoff runs. And so once your younger players can elevate to a point that that you can win with them, and along with Jimmy and the other veteran guys, then you can always think about running it back and be successful. But is that going to be what's going to lead to a championship? And that's all you think about. So
interested to see what the Miami Heat are going to do here for sure. I think that this is a very easy team to convince yourself to run it back with. I think that if you look at where things were at the end of this comes down to a Jimmy Butler shot, right? Jimmy Butler hits that three. They could be playing game 3 tonight, tied 1-1 with the Warriors. And we're not having this conversation. Maybe Tyler Hero, as he said, was going to be closer to 100% in the NBA Finals. And we don't have this grand debate about where this team is at. But I think some things are very interesting with this. This was a very similar question that the Miami Heat had to ask themselves after the 2020 Finals. And that had a much quicker turnaround. You had to get back in the span of like a month to come back for training camp and get set for things. This is more of the case of, hey, we are going to go into a real off season here. We're going to evaluate some things. We're going to see if our young guys get better. What do we do here? And I think it is an interesting thing that they got to chew on, because Pat said something that was so interesting with wanting to finish out this build and saying that he wasn't really into the idea of we're going to do 3 more years of this build and all that type of stuff. Like, he wants to strike while the iron's hot. And when he says this build, I truly think that he's talking about Jimmy, in that Jimmy was the orca, the whale that he got post LeBron James, post Big 3 to come here, and he wants to build around him. He has seen that this guy can put on incredible postseason performances, that he should be good enough to be the best player on a championship team, that they just need to find the right running mate with him. And, was asked about the idea of adding another scorer next to him, and he's like, listen, if you could find him, throw him to me. If you guys can think of any, send me, let me know. But I really do think that the gears are turning for Pat Riley, in that this team was good, but it was a little bit weird too. Like, we can all acknowledge that as good a story as this Miami Heat team was this year, you could take it two ways. You could say that this team wasn't healthy at all year and had chunks where Bam was out, chunks where Jimmy was out, chunks where Kyle was out. okay? And their top highest paid players, and still finished atop the East. And some people may take it back and say, well, imagine if they were all there. Would they be more dominant? Is this a Suns situation where, like, they could come back, you basically bring back the entire unit, and you are running like a well-oiled machine, and your record's even better the next year? I don't rule that out. I think that could happen. I don't think it's crazy to think that, but I think a couple of things. One, I think that they're still going to always have those games with Jimmy. Jimmy's going to miss 20 games a year because of little nagging injuries, and you want to have him like this, tuned up for the playoffs, ready to go. I think that with this team, do they look upon it as, hey, everyone's going to know this team a little bit better. People will know who Max Strus is. They'll know who Gabe Vincent is. They'll know Omer Yurtseven. They'll know more of Tyler Hero and this version of Tyler Hero, and that'll be figured out quicker? Or do they all take steps up? Do they all mature? All that type of stuff, along with Kyle Lowry being more comfortable. These are things you could talk yourself into. You could say, oh, that's how it would go. I just feel like, though, they tried doing that essentially the next year after they went to the finals against the Lakers, in that they brought back Goran. They tried bringing, brought back Myers Leonard, basically brought back everybody except for Jay Crowder. They're like, we'll figure out the Jay Crowder thing, right? Which they never really did, in credit to Jay. Jay ended up going to the finals that year with the Suns. So I wonder, does this Heat team think to themselves, just because you caught lightning with all the ancillary pieces around Jimmy Butler, can lightning strike twice, essentially? Because I do think that they know their cornerstones. This is what I think. I think it's Jimmy. I think it's Bam. And I think they are true to what Pat's saying in PJ Tucker. And so if we think that, that's really your front court right there. It's Bam, it's PJ, and then Jimmy's your, do it all three. And knowing that Spo isn't really in a box with these positions and all that type of stuff. But the question, I think, really lies with that backcourt. Like, what are they going to do? Is this going to be a case of, do they go get a high-volume scoring guard? Can they go get one of these orcas that's out there? A Donovan Mitchell, a Bradley Beal, a Damian Lillard, a Zach LaVine, somebody like that. These are a lot of the names that have been kicked around. What is it going to take to get those guys? And then I think the biggest question is, what are their thoughts on Tyler? We talked a lot about that earlier this week, what do they think his development is? But I think a lot of it also is going to have to do with, what is the belief that Kyle Lowry will get into better shape, but also, will he hold up? They gave a lot of money to an old guy. They gave a lot of money to a guy who's going to be 37 before the next playoffs. What does that look like next season? What is he going to bring to the table? And do they feel like, is he dynamic enough of a player, as much as they love his intangibles, his leadership, his tenacity? And Kyle did have a big game 6 at certain points. It did hit some clutch shots, but ultimately this is a guy that basically wasn't available for the playoffs, and it really killed the Heat. It did. And his shooting wasn't there. Had a nice little run kind of towards the end of the season, which is one of these things too, where it's like, when you talk about Kyle Lowry, and I see a lot of the people who are, a lot of Raptors fans very mad at Pat Riley, saying, oh, how dare you call him fat? How dare you? He was dealing with all this stuff this year. And it's like, he was dealing with stuff this year, but there's I think it's because the regular season was so long ago, people are kind of losing perception of when he was out, how long he was out. He missed 9 games in January, and you don't think about that with Jimmy. Like, Jimmy missed 9 games in January. Bam missed 9 games. You don't think about that. That's so long ago. And to think that all of this comes down to, he was out for these reasons, and that's why he wasn't in the shape. No, he wasn't in that shape all year. He came in a little bit like, I'm going to do it my way, do my thing. Not even a guy who really pushed the pace with running a lot. Like, was doing a lot of throw the ball down the court and see what happens. I got Jimmy Butler down there, and Jimmy says, I got the best hands in the NBA. I'm going to make some stuff happen. So he did some really crafty Kyle Lowry stuff, but did not have a good year shooting the basketball. Did not have a good year as far as as far as giving you that scoring punch up until really he came back for that little end of the season run and put some things together for Miami, which is so weird that we keep talking about this layoff that he had and acting like it was such a detriment to his season, because in reality Kyle Lowry had his best scoring burst after he came back. He was shooting like 49% from the field. He was shooting like 47% from downtown after the break happened. So I'm finding it strange that we're looking here and be like, man, Kyle was really out for all this time, and that's really what messed him up. I think we just got to accept the fact that, one, yeah, he's just not in that great of shape and wasn't in that great of shape. Okay. But also that he's old. And you have to be worried. You see what happens to a guy like Chris Paul, the size, the age that he is. And Chris Paul did all this diet changing and all this type of stuff, but he's still getting banged up at the end of the year. I think the way that Kyle Lowry plays, throwing his body all over the place, flying all over the place, trying to get the burst downhill, and he really doesn't have like what he used to. I don't know if I have the faith. Even if you told me Kyle Lowry did all of the Heat culture stuff, ripped, comes in great shape, all that type of stuff, I don't know that I have faith that he's going to be that at the end of the year, because he was saying like this, I've never had an injury like this before. I've never had something like this before. Well, once he starts having it, are you worried that it's going to be starting to flare up again? Because if Chris Paul is any comparison, feels like it is. It is something. And Chris Paul kind of gets like every piece of his body hurts. But I am worried about that. And I do think that the Heat have to wonder to themselves with Kyle. I think shape is obviously the place you go, because it's like old, hamstrings, fat, got to lose weight. But I am mostly focused on just the age, and I'm worried about that. Because I didn't I didn't look at Kyle Lowry. I was like, oh my God, this guy looks like Ray Felton. Like he looks so sloppy. But I do think that the Heat have to wonder to themselves. We brought in, that was their big swing this year. They brought in Kyle. Remember, they had to deal with tampering investigations over it, because they wanted to put Jimmy with his guy. This guy, Jimmy and him are very, very close. I think Kyle's the godfather to his daughter. Super, close friends. Did every interview in the postseason together, basically. Enjoy each other's company, which I think bodes in the plus side for Kyle Lowry coming back. I do think that would lead you to believe like, oh, well, then Kyle Lowry's going to be back with the Miami Heat. But, does Jimmy, we've seen this with friends before. I saw this with LeBron and Dwayne Wade, where LeBron's like, he was rats off a ship on Dwayne Wade, not once, but twice. He's like, I left him in Miami and basically traded the whole roster in Cleveland. And does Jimmy Butler and his friendship with Kyle Lowry, is it so strong? One, that he could have, I guess, the conversations of what do we got to do to get through the season? Does Jimmy just feel like this was a fluke and that Kyle will be healthy for next year? Or would he be open to the idea of moving somebody like him and his salary for somebody who can help him win the championship? These are tough questions to know. But they're definitely things I think that the Heat have to chew on and wonder when it comes to Kyle and his future with the team. So, I just feel, though, after getting the tone of that press conference, that running it back, whether it's with his wife, seems like it's a formula that's worked out with Pat Riley, but running it back with his team, I think that we've seen him do a version of that, and I don't think he liked the results. I think that it's very important for him to do what he can to put the best pieces around Jimmy Butler, and he's going to do that no matter what the results were of this season. I think he's going to think, because I feel like Pat Riley looks at this and thinks to himself, if I have Jimmy Butler, and I think if I have a Bam Adebayo who's improving, I think those two guys, I could put the pieces around that, ancillary pieces. I think we're going to have a lot of success, because you're talking about two of the best two-way players in the league. What can we put around them to have a lot of success this season? And everything else, I kind of feel like is on the table. This is not sources. This is not intel. This is just gut going on of feeling what the post the postseason mood was of him, feeling how bitter he was, saying that he wants to finish this build out, that he doesn't want to keep it going for year after year. That is speaking to me that this is the Jimmy Butler window, the Jimmy Butler build that he's trying to fulfill. That they're going to try and do everything they can to get Jimmy what he needs to go win that championship. And I don't know if that means running it back. It feels very much like that means might be some changes that are coming to the Miami Heat.